Hi there, my name's Alejandro from the Greedy Dragon, and this is Lessons in Media, a series where I will talk about the unique aspects on some of our favorite books, TV shows, video games, movies, and more, and how you can apply them to your games to make yourself a better game master, while also giving you a free practical example you can use in your own games. And for today's first lesson, I decided I wanted to talk about an overlooked aspect of the TTRPG sphere. You could say I'm going into uncharted territory, unexplored lands. The subject I want to talk about is how to make a good... Okay, full honesty, we've never been able to get that sentence out with a straight face. I have way too many outtakes of me laughing. In reality, there are a lot of fantastic videos out there made by some wonderful creators on how to make a good villain, whether that be their motivation, what kind of abilities they might have in combat, even literary examples you can pull from to make your villain more than just a giant blob of evil. But to try and bring something new to the table, I want to talk about something that I don't actually think is overlooked when it comes to making a villain, or a BBEG, big bad evil guy. What are they doing? And I don't mean what their goal is. No. What I am talking about is what practical steps are they taking to achieve the theoretical objectives they need to win the day, whether that be to destroy the world, get the MacGuffin, take over the realms, whatever it is. And the reason I ask that is because it's been my experience that when a GM knows the answer to these questions, it becomes much easier for them to figure out what clues get the party on their trail, what kind of challenges the party might face as they unravel the plan, and how your BBEG will react when the players inevitably start ruining all of their hard work. And to help walk us through that, I'm going to be using the villain from the video game Mafia III, Sal Marcano, and his organization as an example, thus presenting Mafia III's perfect recipe for how to make a good villain. In Mafia III, you face off against Sal Marcano, the biggest crime lord in the city of New Bordeaux, who tricks you, the player, into helping him with his master plan or pinning all of the blame on you and leaving you for dead. Now, what makes Sal such a great villain is that he has a plan with practical steps to achieve his theoretical goals. And in that plan are multiple avenues, each with their own storyline, with clues that lead into the other storylines, and finally to Sal himself, thus creating a dynamic game for the players to interact. In Sal's case, the goal is to escape the criminal lifestyle and go legit with some quotation marks by opening up a hotel and casino that he and his organization can run from the shadows. To do that, Sal needs 3 things, with each objective being looked over by one of his own lieutenants. In the game, they're called capos. And it's with those objectives where the story avenues are created. So let's get into those avenues, shall we? First, he needs to acquire some land he can build the actual hotel and casino on without drawing any suspicion to himself. And in charge of this is his sister-in-law, Olivia Marcano, a known southern socialite from old money who utilizes her connections among the city's elite to find someone who not only owns land they can build on, but can also serve as the public face of the casino project, thus keeping any investigating authorities off of the Marcano's trail. Next up, Sal needs money to not only pay for the casino itself, but also for any bribes that might need to be made to keep everything on the down low. In charge of this is Sal's younger brother, Tommy Marcano, who utilizes his connections from running casinos in Cuba to start up a counterfeiting operation using plates that they had you steal from the Federal Reserve before they betrayed you, thus giving them an unlimited amount of money to work with. And finally, Sal needs to have the laws surrounding gambling in New Bordeaux changed, as it is currently very illegal, and you can't really run a casino if you're gonna get arrested for going to it. In charge of this is Sal's older brother, good old Uncle Lou, the talker of the Marcano family, who specializes in making sure that everybody who's somebody is either paid off or blackmailed into submission. This includes lawmakers, police, the media, and a federal judge and state senator, the exact people they'll need to have a big law changed. The next part of the recipe that Mafia 3 provides after creating those story avenues is Sal's reaction once you, as the player, take down each capo and their operation. You see, after each one goes down, Sal will react in a big way that makes your life harder. When you take down Olivia, Sal has her murdered and pins the blame on you, causing a citywide manhunt to go after you. When you take out Tommy, Sal escalates it even further by hiring a hit squad to hunt you down, and they'll keep doing so randomly throughout the game until either you die, and then they'll do it again when you respawn, or you're able to take all of them out before you die. And then finally, when you take out good old Uncle Lou, Sal finally accepts that his plan is ruined, and he decides to go out in a blaze of glory with all of his remaining resources, and hopefully taking you down with him. These reactions serve the purpose of keeping Sal at the forefront of the story, with an added bonus of creating a much more personal tension between you as the player and him as the villain, making you invested in taking him down. Now, after reviewing all of that, we're left with what I think is a great recipe for a memorable and fun villain for your parties to go up against. Ingredient number 1, have a villain with a goal. Ingredient number 2, break down that goal into the theoretical objectives they need in order to achieve it. Ingredient number 3, break down those objectives even further into the practical steps either the villain or their lieutenants, if you create them, will take in order to achieve each objective. And here's where you can sprinkle in the party's backstories to create the different story avenues to give that personal tension and create a more dynamic game. Or, if you want to do this before you have the player's backstories or someone gave you a single sentence worth of backstory, all you need to do is just make the story avenues broad enough to where you can easily add them in after the fact. And then finally, ingredient number 4, figure out how your villain will react in a big way after the players create each story avenue and complete it. Now that we've broken down the system and broken down each ingredient, really the only way to know if it works is to try it out. So let's get in the kitchen, get cooking, and make a villain. For our villain, I want to go with a classic. This is Bob. Bob the Destroyer, and he's a lich. He doesn't even really remember why he became a lich. All he knows is that it had something to do with gaining more power, and that has become his obsession. And so one day while Bob was gazing at the stars, he thought to himself, "You know what? I'm gonna eat the soul of a god." You heard me right, dear viewers. Bob's final goal is to enact a ritual that will capture the soul of a god in his soul cage and use it to become the most powerful being in the universe, and then remake the planes in his own image. But there's a bit of a problem. You see, Bob's current soul cage isn't powerful enough to actually handle the soul of a god. It would break, thus killing Bob. So he's gonna need a few things. Number 1, he's gonna need to figure out a method to upgrade his soul cage itself. And then number 2, he's gonna need a lot of really powerful souls to not only fuel the new soul cage, but to also experiment with each upgrade to make sure it's up to par. And then finally, at number 3, he needs to find a way of doing the previous 2 without drawing too much suspicion to himself. And right there, we have 2 things we need for the recipe. Bob's goal, contain the soul of a god and use it to remake the universe, and the objectives he needs to achieve that goal. Get a more powerful soul cage, get more powerful souls to upgrade that soul cage, and find a way to do it while staying safe and free from suspicion. So let's break that down a little more into the actual practical plan to achieve it, and let's take the time to create some lieutenants who will be carrying out each objective. First up on Bob's list is finding someone who can research and find a way to upgrade his soul cage, and to do that, he reaches out to an old student of his. Beef Jesus is, quite frankly, a madman who is obsessed with melding arcane technology and necromantic magic, and he does not care how many eggs he needs to break to make his omelet, which makes him the perfect person for Bob to recruit. And so Beef will spend his time kidnapping monsters from the forest and townsfolk from the nearby villages and experimenting on them in his factory. Most of these experiments will be a total failure for the soul cage. they will still serve the purpose of acting as metal monstrosities he can use as his own personal muscle. Each story avenue would have the players face off against a cold and ruthless man whose devotion to his own ambition and to his teacher means he's willing to do anything to achieve his goals, and I do mean. But kidnapping monsters from the forest and villagers from the towns is all fine and dandy for the average experiment in metal monstrosity, but to really upgrade a soul cage, Leaf is going to need more powerful souls, and for that, he's going to be relying on the more discerning eye of the next lieutenant, Tony the Rakshasa. Tony is a fiend who is good at finding things. By saying that 5 times fast. And that's why his job is to locate and track potential souls who could be used for the actual upgraded soul cage itself. And for a while, that's exactly what he did. He would scour the land looking for already established adventurers, new up-and-coming stars, and everything in between. But after a while, he had an idea. Why should he go to them when he can make them come to him? So, for the past few centuries, Tony has been running an adventurers guild known as the Tiger's Claw under the guise of an old, retired, gnomish adventurer named Gixim Flotsam, where he will take new up-and-coming stars seemingly under his wing and mentoring them. And after a while, and he's deemed them strong enough, he'll start sending them on more and more dangerous missions. The issue is, with each one they succeed on, the next one has less information and less resources available. Now, if they make it back, great! All Tony needs to do is keep up the guise of having absolute faith in their abilities. When they eventually don't, all Tony does is activate a hidden device inside the guild insignia, will collect their souls and send it off to be for experimentation. Tony's story path will focus on the insatiable greed that this fiend has. I mean, all he cares about is money. It's all Bob had to offer him. But, flip side, this does also mean that Tony will probably be the easiest to turn against Bob should the party decide to do that. If he can be convinced that Bob doesn't intend to honor their deal, or even worse, backstab him after it's done, well, Tony would just turn around and start selling off all of Bob's information to the highest bidder. But Bob has been around for a while. He knows the risk of betrayal. So he's gotten an insurance policy. His name is Carl. Carl is a Dracolich. Think an undead meat dragon. And he was recruited, with some quotation marks, by Bob to serve as both an insurance policy against any pesky adventurers who get a little too close to the truth, and as a warning to anyone who might think of betraying him. The issue is, however, Carl doesn't want to serve Bob. You see, in Carl's story avenue, I decided to do something a bit different. Instead of him being a willing participant, he's actually very much being coerced into doing this, because when Bob first went to recruit him, negotiations fell apart. Bob had nothing Carl wanted. So, Bob stole Carl's soul gem, the thing that maintains his undeath, and is holding it hostage to force Carl to work for him. What this presents is a mini-boss with multiple potential endings. It could just be a straight-up slugfest where the party takes out Carl. Or, if they learn about Carl's plight, they might agree to steal Carl's soul gem back from Bob in return for Carl helping them, either against Bob themselves or later down the line when they need it. Makes it interesting. Regardless of which story avenues the players decide to finish first and which ones they decide to finish last, it will all lead to Bob in his lair putting the final touches on his ritual and getting ready to enact it. And there we have it. A villain with a well-thought-out plan and operation with multiple story avenues for the party to choose from, all made using the recipe from Mafia III. And the best part for you, the GM, is you can start off the party on any of the story avenues that you want and just tie in the others through clues. For example, maybe the party has some family who have gone missing from the towns around Beef's factory, and while investigating the factory itself, they discover the insignia from the Tiger's Claws Guild. Or maybe they're new members of the guild itself, and as their star power rises, they start noticing that all the previous stars of the guild in the older generations were sent to the same dungeon or same area and never seemed to come back. So they decide to investigate further, drawing their guildmaster's ire. Or maybe they're just a party of adventurers who are dumb enough and brave enough to go into an unexplored dungeon that smells of death and fire. And that's the end of the video. If you're interested in using the plan that we made today, there's a full write-up down in the description below that will include plot hooks for each of the story avenues to help you decide where to start, clues that will lead into the other story avenues when you finish each one, and some suggestions on how Bob might react when you take each lieutenant down, as well as a full worksheet in case you want to make your own plan using this method. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Please think with your hearts and minds, and goodbye.